It arrived in silence. No fanfare, no procession, just a single rider, cloaked in dust and blood, slipping through the gates of Rome like a shadow from another world. In his hand, a sealed parchment bearing the marks of Jerusalem. No one knew what it said, at least not at first. But by nightfall, a door deep within the Vatican slammed shut, and within hours, the Pope had vanished from public view. What was written in that letter? Who sent it? And why did the contents of one document, smuggled from a war-torn city thousands of miles away, cause the Holy See to tremble? This is not a tale you'll find in most history books. It lives in footnotes, in faded manuscripts buried beneath centuries of censorship. The Church denies it ever happened, but fragments remain, and when you piece them together, a chilling truth begins to emerge. A truth that begins not in Rome, but in the blood-soaked streets of Jerusalem during the First Crusade. It was the summer of 1099. After 3 years of slaughter, disease, starvation, and betrayal, the Crusaders had finally reached their prize, Jerusalem, the holy city, the place where Christ had walked, where prophets had died, and where empires had clashed for centuries. But this was no triumph. What happened during the siege of Jerusalem was not holy. It was a massacre. For 2 days, Crusaders turned the city into a graveyard. Blood ran through the streets. Mosques, synagogues, and even churches were burned. Civilians, men, women, and children were slaughtered indiscriminately. One eyewitness, a Norman knight, wrote that blood reached the ankles of his horse. Some say this was an exaggeration. Others believe it was an understatement. But amid the chaos, a strange figure moved unnoticed. A priest, not a soldier, tasked with recovering holy relics from the city. His name was Father Anselmo of Amalfi. He had no sword, no armor, just a rosary, a parchment journal, and a sealed letter entrusted to him by a dying monk, an Eastern Christian who had lived in Jerusalem long before the Crusaders ever arrived. That monk, with his last breath, warned Anselmo, "Take this to Rome. Tell them everything they know is wrong." The letter was written in Syriac, ancient, sacred, and dangerous. Anselmo couldn't read it himself, but the monk's final words burned in his mind. So, as the Crusaders raised their bloody banners over Jerusalem, Father Anselmo slipped away from the camp. No one noticed, no one cared. One more priest, lost in the ruins. Took him nearly a year to reach Rome, and by the time he arrived, he was dying. Infection, starvation, and the weight of what he'd seen had eaten through him. But he delivered the letter, personally, to Pope Paschal II. What happened next is a matter of deep speculation and whispered legend. The Vatican records show only that, in 1100, a papal decree was issued to seal certain texts, protect the faith, and root out heresies born from the East. But no heresies were named. No texts were ever shown to the public. Some scholars believe this decree was a cover, an effort to bury the contents of Anselmo's letter forever. So what did the letter say? Some claim it contained proof that Christ had not died on the cross, but had been taken down alive and spirited away by a secret sect in Jerusalem. That his teachings were preserved not by Rome, but by a hidden group of desert mystics who believed salvation came through knowledge, not sacrifice. Others believe the letter detailed events from the early Christian church that contradicted the Gospels, suggesting that the Vatican's foundations were built not on divine truth, but on carefully edited myths. There's one theory even darker, that the letter contained a warning, a prophecy passed down through Eastern Christians for centuries, of a time when a false crusade would be launched not to save Jerusalem, but to claim a power buried beneath it, an ancient relic sealed since the time of Solomon, and that the true purpose of the crusade was not redemption but possession. Whatever the truth, something shifted in the Vatican after that letter arrived. Father Anselmo was never seen again. Officially, he died of illness, but no grave was ever marked. No records of his burial exist. And Pope Paschal, once a public and fervent supporter of the Crusades, became noticeably silent on the issue in his later years. Letters from his own bishops complained that the Pope had become troubled, sleepless, lost in contemplation of dark counsel. There are reports, buried in private archives, of a hidden vault built beneath the Lateran Palace during this time. A chamber with no windows, sealed with iron and guarded day and night. Some believe the letter is still there, along with other texts confiscated during the Crusades. Texts that, if revealed, would unravel the Church's narrative of divine authority. Centuries later, during the reign of Pope Innocent III, one of the most powerful popes in history, rumors of the letter surfaced again. A group of Templars, returning from the Holy Land, reportedly found references to a sealed message hidden in the early Crusade records. They tried to access it. Within a year, their order was dissolved. Their leaders burned. Coincidence? Perhaps. But every time the Church's power is threatened by discoveries from the East, strange things happen. Archives go missing. Scholars vanish. Heretics are silenced. And yet, fragments survive. In 18th century France, a Jesuit historian working in the Vatican archives mentioned a letter from Jerusalem that had shaken the stones of St. Peter. His notes were seized. He died in his sleep weeks later. In modern times, some researchers claim the letter was not destroyed, but hidden, copied, passed secretly among a small group of archivists inside the Vatican, men and women who believe the Church must one day confront the truths it has buried. They say the letter ends with a single sentence, one that Father Anselmo circled 3 times before sealing it. The light of God cannot be owned, only feared by those who live in shadow. So here we are, centuries later. The Vatican stands. The Crusades are remembered as holy wars. And the letter, if it ever truly existed, remains locked away, unread, unspoken, but perhaps it's still there, beneath layers of silence, waiting. And perhaps that's why the Church still trembles, not at war or heresy or even time itself, but at the memory of a letter, a single voice from the ruins of Jerusalem, whispering the one thing power cannot bear: truth.